This is the Web Platform Podcast, a developer discussion that dives deep into all things web. We chat about software development for mobile, HDTV, wearables, robotics, user experience, mentoring, and everything related to building products and services for the web platform of today, tomorrow, and beyond. This is episode 8 of the Web Platform Podcast. Today we are going to talk about Dart, a scalable language and web development platform. Dart Lang, the language itself, was recently made an ECMAScript standard and is growing pretty fast. So your hosts today are myself, Eric Isaacson, UX engineer at 3Pillar Global, and Christian Smith, startup enthusiast and open source developer. So our guest today is Chris Strom, owner of ECMA Computes LLC. And Chris is a code explorer, daily blogger, and community leader in Dart, JavaScript, and several other languages. He is also the author of 3D Game Programming for Kids, Patterns in Polymer, Dart for Hipsters, The Speedy Book, and co-author of Recipes with Backbone. So he prefers to code with Dart, but he also builds with JavaScript, Ruby, Go, and a lot more.
Howdy. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming. I went to eecomputes.com, and you have on there you're emphasizing the quality of a simple product, and you blog daily, so you have like enormous amounts of blog posts, which is great. Can you speak to the value of content over marketing, first of all?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's it's a very simple website. It's designed more as a wink and a nod to the people that I know and I meet out in the community. But yeah, that's the guy that does a lot of his slides and a lot of his illustrations in his books with crayons, and that's what the website looks like. It's a very simple one, designed to attract a certain kind of client that I'm going to enjoy working with. Is really what I'm going for, and really the content of the website and the whole design is geared towards getting clients that are going to want to work with me and that are going to work well with me. So that's really the entire goal of that website, and it's worked well so far.
Chris, you've written, what is it, like 1,600 blog posts, and I mean, how many books? 5 books, maybe you're working on another one right now too.
Right.
And so going on 6 books, and then all the code that you have to crank out to acquire enough knowledge to actually write about coding. How do you do this? How are you so prolific both as a coder and a writer? Do you have some kind of secret?
Yes, please share.
It really comes about. It comes about from doing it every day. I mean, it's one of those life hacker things that I read. I read about from Jerry Seinfeld, where his idea or his thing for becoming a really good comedian was just to work on it every single day. And every single day you work on it. It doesn't have to be for hours and hours. It has to be for a good amount of time. 15 minutes, half hour, or something like that every day, where you need to work at your craft. And every day you do that, you put a little X on the calendar, and pretty soon after you've done it for a week or so, you've got 7, 10 X's on the calendar, and they form a chain on the calendar. And you can look at that, and you can see that that's building up, and soon it'll take on a life of its own, to the point where you don't want to break that chain. You've got 10 of those X's, you've got 20, you've got 50 of those X's, and once it gets to be that big, you don't want to break it anymore. And so I thought, I was never much of a blogger. I'd written a couple of small little blog posts here or there, never much of a writer. I hadn't written any books at that point, but just one day I thought, divine inspiration or whatever it was, I thought maybe it would be a good idea to just chain a series of blog posts and see where it took me. And that was on Sinatra. It was on Sinatra and CouchDB, rewriting an old blog that I had using Sinatra and CouchDB. But the idea being that I didn't want to just learn something, either one of those tools on the surface. I wanted to learn them deeply. I wanted to really get involved with them and know them well enough to be able to use them prolifically. And so I went about writing every single day, making small progress, not huge progress. And it really is that small progress, building every day upon the work that you've done the day before and the day before that, that helps me really internalize what I'm learning and learn it well enough to the point that I can write about it in books. And it just sort of took off from there, really.
Yeah, I see your stuff coming in on Google Plus and Twitter like every day, and so it's pretty inspiring. It's like, oh, how does he find the time to do all this? You know, I mean, I found you through GitHub, right? Where I was looking for a solution to work with Angular and Polymer together, and you had that one repository which was a directive Angular bind that was JavaScript, right? But
right.
But it was really useful, and it gave me a lot of ideas, and so that led me to one of your books, one of many.
Right, Patterns of Polymer. Yep.
Yes. What I really liked was that you publish it, and then as you do these blogs, it updates like you update it regularly, and you can get the repository if you pay for the book, obviously, and then you can help contribute to it, which is great. But you can also build it yourself, so you get the latest versions,
right?
Which is really awesome. So. Thank you for that. I recommend anybody pick up your books that that are a little bit that way.
I appreciate it. Please buy my books.
Yeah, and there's two versions of that book as well. One with Dart and one with just JavaScript. And I read through the JavaScript one because I'm more familiar with that. But it's interesting that a lot of your blog posts seem to be focused on Dart lately. So that leads me to ask, are you writing a new book?
Right. Right now I'm just doing preliminary research on the book, which is going to be design patterns in Dart. I'm not ready to start writing that or even to start selling access to a repository. Right now it's just like I'm trying to understand the things that I need to understand in order to write that book. So I've taken a couple of patterns, worked through them in Dart, and tried to figure out what I need to do, what I need to understand in order to make reasonable recommendations for the solutions that I'm presenting in the book. And that's, it seemed like a good opportunity to do that while I was, sort of done with the Polymer book, but I still need to go back once everything is settled down with Chrome, and it sort of has now with the latest releases. So I'll be able to go back, rewrite a few of the chapters, maybe add another chapter, and get back to the screencasts on that. Right now is a really good opportunity for me to just go through and work on the design pattern stuff and start to understand what I need to understand to do a really good job on that book.
What is it about design patterns? Why did you choose that subject? Is there something about Dart that relates to design patterns in a different way than other languages, or what motivated you to write a book about that combination of subjects?
Well, it was it's mostly because Dart is a statically typed language, and a lot of the design patterns that are in the original Gang of Four book were based upon C++, which is a similarly typed language. They're not identical, but they're similar. And for the most part in my career, I've used JavaScript and I've used Ruby, which are very dynamic languages. That don't lend you can do some patterns, but a lot of them just simply don't apply. They're sort of baked into the language. And I just realized that, hey, Dart is a similar kind of language that would allow me to use some of those patterns. I've already started using some of them in my code, and I've seen other people use those patterns. I'd be really interested in going through and exploring that. And also, I like the idea of patterns. I really do. I especially like the idea of I really enjoyed the original version of the book from the architecture book from Christopher Alexander. I really enjoyed that book more than I enjoyed the design patterns book from the Gang of Four. It seems like an interesting idea, but I don't know the design patterns in computer programming well enough, or at least I don't feel like I know them well enough. And it seemed like a really great opportunity for me to learn them inside and out. So I'm really excited about it.
Awesome.
When I first heard about Dart, I have to say I was thinking immediately CoffeeScript, because I'm thinking of it as like it's like a client that runs through some special VM that's only Google approved, and it'll only run in Chrome. But then you have this JavaScript runtime called Dart to JS. Can you clarify a lot of that for people?
Well, sure. I mean, there's a Dart VM that runs on the client, and it runs on server as well. So it's similar to JavaScript in that respect, that it can embed in the browser and embed in on the server. But on the client in the browser, it's nowhere. It's not even in Chrome right now. So the only way to actually run a Chrome or a Dart application in any browser nowadays is to compile it with Dart to JS in order to do something like that. So it's what's really nice about that, though, and what differentiates it from a lot of the other competitors that are out there, is that there's a compatibility layer that you write all your Dart code against. So any of your DOM code, any of your local storage code, any code that's going to work with anything in the browser is going to work through that compatibility layer. So you're compiling both the compatibility layer and your code to deploy it out to places. And what this is really nice for is that everything just works. When you deploy your code, it works in Firefox, it works in Internet Explorer, it works in Chrome, because of that compatibility layer. The compatibility layer is what the Dart developers really focus on and try to get right, so that when you're trying to access the DOM, or when you're trying to do some crazy 3D animation or something like that, it just works. And it's amazing to see that actually happen. The first time I did that and saw, I was doing some sort of crazy animation background. I don't know what I was doing. It was just all sorts of crazy stuff was going on, and I've been working with the VM that's embedded in like a specialized version of Chrome in Dart. And it worked. It was nice, and then I compiled it to JavaScript, and it worked exactly the same in Firefox and Internet Explorer, which was just amazing. I didn't have to do anything. It was a really clarifying moment to see. I understand why they're doing this and why this is going to be a big deal.
Do you find it affects, like when you look at the output of that in JavaScript, do you find that there's some code that maybe isn't optimal, like as far as performance or anything like that?
I never actually look at I've looked at the code a couple of times, but it's all, uglified and compressed and all that kind of stuff. So there's no sense in actually looking at it to try and understand what it's doing. Okay. But all indications are, what they've been doing is they've been working through various benchmarks that are important for normal web development, and trying to ensure that the Dart to JS code is fast. And what they found is they've gotten to the point where it's faster to write the Dart code and compile it to JavaScript than it actually is to handwrite the JavaScript. So we're getting to the point, or we've been at the point for a while now, where the Dart to JS code is faster than almost anything you can do just hand coding it, which is pretty impressive.
But as far as like taking another language or pseudo language, whatever you want to call it, and compiling to JavaScript, it reminded me too of also Atlas. I don't know if you remember the old .NET Ajax compiler thing, but basically it would convert to like ECMAScript 3. Right, so you wouldn't get any of the advantages of any new code that had been released in the language itself, and it would give you compatibility back, like you said, to other languages, but other versions, of browsers. But the Dart VM, that surprises me that it's not in Chrome, like embedded in it already.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of people were really scared when when Google first announced Dart, that it was going to go in there and they were going to stop supporting JavaScript and replace it and all that kind of stuff. They're taking their time on that one, and there's no there's no end in sight for when they actually are going to embed that directly in there. I mean, right now they're really focusing on just that Dart to JS compatibility layer so that it works everywhere. Eventually, I'm sure it'll go in there when they decide the time is right. That it's just time to start being able to write native Dart applications. But right now, in the early days of Dart, and it still is the early days of Dart, they're focusing more on compatibility with all the browsers rather than trying to take over the world with just Dart.
Yeah, I can definitely see the advantage of that. Right away, you're going to get more buy-in from developers who are stuck building for old IE.
Well, actually, that you won't get because it only supports the versions of IE that Google supports, which are the last two ones. And at this point, I think that's Internet Explorer 10 and 11. So if you need to support, 9 and 8 and anything older than that, Dart's not going to be your current best option. But if you're writing modern applications, if you're writing applications for what they like to call the modern web, then Dart is fantastic.
As far as the community and the viability of this language in the future, do you see other browsers adopting this VM to make it faster at some point? How do you see the future of this, basically?
I don't know. I would. Eventually, like I said, I think the Dart VM will go into Chrome. There's not really a huge rush to do that. I guess right now the main drawback to not having the Chrome VM in there is that the JavaScript that's generated is on the large side. It's not like megabytes worth of JavaScript that's generated, but it's still, tens of kilobytes, hundreds of kilobytes, depending on what you're doing. So it tends to be a little bit large. So it would be nice if more browsers would embed the Dart VM in there. But it's only just now become a ECMA standard. The same standards body that's standardized JavaScript. So it's only just now become a standard. I don't see that happening anytime soon. I really still think that they're going to focus on embedding, or being able to generate really nice, fast JavaScript applications. And so far, just being able to do that has really been a lifesaver for me personally. So I'm not going to complain if they take their time embedding the VM into the browsers.
Do you see this being used for mobile or Internet of Things?
Yeah, some people have generated Dart applications, that run inside the browser for mobile. Again, you're running into the issues with where the JavaScript code can be sort of large, which is kind of a chilling effect on mobile. But I really hope that one day Google decides that Android can be coded with Dart. I would be thrilled if I didn't have to code at Java in order to do mobile applications, or Swift or if I could do Dart to code at mobile applications, I would be thrilled.
Why not just use Dart as the at the very low level inside Android? Because seeing like these hosting platforms that are coming out now, like Dart Void, where you can host on the server side with Dart now, that gives it much more viability. The reason that people code with JavaScript is not because it's the best language ever, right? A lot of it is the ubiquity of it, like where you can put it all.
Right. Well, and also it's the only language, or historically it's been the only language that will work in the browser. So you don't really have a choice right now, but that's changing.
And do you want to talk about the main complaints in the community for Dart or Pub?
I'm sorry, the complaints about it?
So for instance, a JavaScript developer may prefer using object prototype inheritance over some functional programming style. Their reasons may vary for that, but other languages and communities might look at this debate in confusion, asking, well, why would you even care about that? What's the big deal?
That's a good question. It's one of those things. You don't really understand a language until you can complain about the language. But I don't know that the community doesn't really have those kinds of arguments. At least not that I'm tuned into, where they hate a new feature of the language, or they can't work with the existing stuff. And maybe that's a credit to the way that Google has been doing it. I haven't really thought about that. They've been extremely open with the community and engaging the community, asking them what they like, laying out. One of the things that they'll do is, before they even implement something, somebody will write a white paper, and just not even a white paper, because you don't have to read 20 pages of this of stuff about the language semantics in order to understand this. They'll put out a paper that's a couple pages long, to saying, we're thinking about implementing this new feature, and it's going to look sort of like this, and we think these are the benefits. And then there's a reasonable discussion around that, and they really seem to do a good job of taking feedback from the community, so that by the time it gets out there, people are pretty excited, and it works really well. And I think that's one of the things that I really have appreciated, that as the language evolves, I'm not losing many things that I don't like, or that I'm not losing many things that I do like, and the new stuff that keeps coming out really just keeps making the language better. So I think I hadn't really thought about that, but they really are doing a superb job of working with the community on that to really keep a lid on those types of disagreements. It's been nice.
It's probably easier that they're a smaller community right now too, and they have time to work it out before everybody dives into adopt. Like JavaScript was out there in, what was it, 8 days, I think?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, 8 days to make a language, and then they put it out there. And the problem with JavaScript is, like, nobody doing JavaScript was like a JavaScript programmer. Everybody's doing C or Lisp or Perl or this or that, and then they all come together and, we have to do JavaScript because it's the only way to program in the browser, right?
Right.
And so everybody brought their own different perspectives and their own their own things they wanted to see in JavaScript, and so I think that's probably why we see so many different approaches to doing things in JavaScript.
Well, if you remember too, with JavaScript, right, it started as LiveScript in Netscape, right?
Yeah.
That was specific to Netscape, and then it became an ECMA standard, similar to what's happening with Dart now. So it's a good point that we could see more languages in the browser.
Yeah, it would be nice to see more languages in the browsers. The current browser community, the current browsers have signaled their reluctance to do something like that. They like the JavaScript standard, and they seem reluctant. And maybe just because it was Google proposing Dart, I don't know, but they seem reluctant to support more than one VM that's in there, at least initially. But we'll see where it goes now that it's an ECMA standard, and they've demonstrated, Google has demonstrated a commitment towards keeping the language moving forward.
I mean, if you look at closed source projects, though, like Internet Explorer 2, they didn't adopt JavaScript even until IE9, right? Because they had JScript, which was like a port of that. They veered into their own direction with it. So you're right. We may see some pushback from those types of communities as well.
Yeah, and maybe that's another reason that we just, that Dart to JS will stick around, because if people start doing the same kind of thing with their Dart VMs that they've done with their JavaScript VMs, we're just going to be back in the same situation where we have to support this crazy, these crazy workarounds for the various browsers. But with Dart to JS and that compatibility layer, we just don't have to worry about it, which is, that certainly has its appeal.
And so, like, for the Dart community, you have Pub, which is a package manager, right?
Right.
Okay, so similar to the idea of Ruby gems and Node and with Node modules. So, like, for me, like, I use a lot of Node, a lot of JavaScript, some Ruby. So, like, I'll do npm install, which is npm the package manager for Node, and it'll just pull like all of these dependencies and just magically make everything work, right?
Right.
So they've learned from the Ruby community and other communities before that. How is it working with Pub and Dart?
Well, not to sound too much like a fanboy here, but Pub is one of the more impressive little things that has come out of this project. When it first went out there, they focused on just the bare minimum of what needed to get done in order to resolve simple dependencies and be able to install packages. And then eventually it grew to the point where they had a repository that was a public common repository that was available for open source code to be installed. And since then, the dependency resolution, they've been working on the dependency resolution so it can handle more and more complex cases. And they've started to add new features in there for being able to build packages, being able to compile the packages and be able to run a test web server with Pub, so you can test out you can run little smoke tests on your code to make sure it's behaving as you think it ought to, which is really nice for development purposes. So as that's grown, it's they've kept consistent towards the pared down the ideals of what it really means, what it really needs to do, and have slowly added on newer features that really work very well.
How easy do they make it for you to do a publication on there?
You just got to have you got to do a little bit of OAuth And once you've got that in there, then it's as simple as running. You build your package. As long as you've got a name in there and a couple other fields, then you just type publish. You don't do. I think you could probably do. Yeah, that is nice. I enjoy that whenever I type it. It's lish, but I think you probably could do publish also. But why do that? So you type publish, and it goes out there, and it's out there, and it's super easy to get it out there. It's so easy to build these things, especially with the language semantics around libraries and modules that are baked into Dart. That it's easier to do this than to just not do it. And so it really encourages breaking things out into nice little workable components that are easy for developers to use, and it's really been very nice.
So I'm a developer. Why would I want to move to Dart? Like, what does it give developers that's so awesome?
Well, I think for me, I come from a Ruby background. Originally I was a Perl programmer. I guess way back in the day I was a Java programmer, then a Perl programmer, then a Ruby programmer, and JavaScript, not by choice, just because it was forced on me. But I like Ruby mostly because it is a pretty language. I like working with a pretty language that I don't have to think too much about implementation details, where I can just look at the code, I can read it, it's easy to access, makes it easier to maintain, build new stuff on, and just work with. It just, I feel better when I'm writing code that's like that. And when I'm writing JavaScript code and I'm thinking about, array prototype slice and prototypical inheritance and just all the stuff that's in JavaScript, I'm not thinking about implementation details, business value that I'm trying to deliver. I mean, ultimately, we're writing this to create awesome applications for users. And what Dart does is it brings a little bit of that Ruby niceness to the browser. You're working with a really pretty language. It allows you to write pretty code. But then you get all the benefits that come along with it. It compiles to JavaScript that runs across all browsers. It's really super fast. You've got nice DOM manipulation, libraries that work everywhere. You've got easy testing. Testing is huge. It works so nicely. There's so many nice ways to do testing in Dart that there's no reason not to. Whereas in JavaScript, it's crazy how much you have to work in order to do testing in order to get that working. So there are a lot of reasons, but for me, the main reason is because it's a pretty language. I really enjoy working with it. I like the code that it lets me write, and I think that most developers will find the same thing.
So do you think that's just the way you feel as far as your workflow, or do you feel like it really gives a lot of benefit to the clients? Like, for instance, does it make you a more efficient developer, or does it build certain things that, like you said, you can get all these multiple targets across browsers? Like, is there clear advantages for you to do it as not just because you love the language, but because it actually helps with providing your clients with some good business outcomes?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that the good business outcomes come from definitely the cross-browser testing. You don't have to worry about that quite as much. As long as I'm working with clients that are recognize that we're working with IE 10 and above, and are working with those like evergreen type of browsers. So right now, it's more of a there are limited use cases for being able to do something like that. But if you can find those projects, it's fantastic for that. But you also get really nice things for the speed. The application speed is significantly faster with Dart, and the maintainability of the projects is huge with Dart. It's a huge win with Dart because of the nice libraries that are just built in. You don't have to worry about CommonJS, AMD, or any of those kinds of things. It's just baked into the language from the outset. To be able to organize your code into classes and separate files for everything, it makes it much easier to work with large code bases and being able to maintain those large code bases, because you're not searching around over all the place or working with the infrastructure to make all that stuff work. It's just there. And then the testing is really big, because if you're if you're delivering if you're trying to deliver quality applications to clients, you need to know that it's doing what you think that the code is doing what you think it's going to do. And then when you're adding new features on there, you want to make sure that you're not breaking any of those existing features and that the new stuff works as well with it. And unless you're going to go through and smoke test everything every time you make a little change, the best way of doing that is having automated tests. And Dart automated tests are brilliant. They're fast, they're easy to write, easy to put under continuous integration servers, and it just works. So there's a lot of value in using Dart for applications.
Similar to the Ruby community, where they embrace, well, I guess not as vehemently as they used to, but the testing test first, right? So
right.
There's RSpec and minispec and all these different testing libraries. Some of the JavaScript community is adopting that mindset, but it's good to hear that there's a lot of opinions. And going off that vein, I mean, there's the Rails for Ruby, right? What is, do you think, the equivalent frameworks for like these opinions?
It's a good question. I think it's going to end up being, Angular and Polymer are going to be the main ones, because right now it's all single page applications. How are you going to do your single page applications? That's what people are trying to write, and that work really well. It's a nice it's a nice approach to coding for the web right now, and the main answer for doing that in Dart is using Angular Dart, which is based on it's the same it's a part of the same project as the Angular JS thing. There's a lot of cross pollination going on between the two projects where the Angular people will the Angular Dart people will learn something new with their approach using their language, and it'll filter back over to the JavaScript side, and then the same thing happens obviously coming from JavaScript side over to Dart, because the JavaScript one was there first. But I think ultimately it's going to be easier to work with the Angular Dart code for the reasons we've talked about already. It's easier for cross-browser compatibility. The testing is easier. I mean, the Angular JavaScript folks have done a really nice job for making testing, both with the protractor for unit tests, and then or for protractor for acceptance tests, and for being able to write unit tests. They've done a really nice job. But at the same time, it doesn't give you all the benefits that Dart does. So I think folks will start to come around there. And then, of course, Polymer, with being able to write web components, being able to write HTML, semantic HTML that reads nicely, that has functionality that's built into them that makes sense. I think that's going to be that's going to be a really nice win. And yeah, both of them are available in JavaScript. So maybe there's going to be a little bit of competition there, but I think as more and more people get started on those, they'll find that it's easier probably to do a lot of what they want in Dart versus JavaScript. We'll see though.
You also do a lot of other cool stuff. We talked a little bit about Polymer and the integration with that. And Polymer Dart is available on Pub, and so is Angular Dart. Some of the Polymer elements I don't think are yet available, but they're being worked on. But moving on to like your other projects, like you have the ICE editor, right? Which I got the pleasure of pair programming with you on. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. That was that grew out of my efforts to write the book 3D Game Programming for Kids, and it was originally done as a single-page application by the 3JS creator Ricardo Cabello. I think I'm getting his name wrong pronouncing it. I'm sure I am, but his name, his nom de plume is Mr. Doob. So Mr. Doob, 3JS fame. I'm sure he's just one of those programmers that one day he knocked out a single-page application, and it was very similar to the ICE code editor, where you could write a little bit of JavaScript, in the browser. You could see a preview, behind it, and it was really nice. And I thought, wow, that would be so helpful for the kids, working along with the 3D game programming book, to be able to do stuff like that. But there were a few things that I needed to tweak here and there, and he wasn't prepared to. It was more just a one-off project for him. He wasn't prepared for pull requests and that kind of stuff. So I forked it. I started working with it in JavaScript to build it up, to add a bunch of features that were going to be necessary in order for kids to use it. And then I got to a point where I said, I just can't maintain this anymore. So I converted it over to Dart. It's actually, it is a Dart application running in the browser, but compiled down to JavaScript. So it works in all browsers. But it's really, the ultimate goal is it's got to work. It's kids that are programming. They're going to have a hard enough time learning JavaScript. They're going to have a hard enough time, trying to understand 3D concepts, game concepts, and all that kind of stuff. They can't have problems with the editor. So it's got to be just, it cannot fail. And that's why I converted it over to Dart. And, that's been the guiding principle for building that up. It's meant to be, let kids write their 3D animations, games, and all that kind of stuff, be able to see a preview right in the editor as they're doing that kind of stuff. And it's got to just work. And it's been just a ton of fun. Got a lot of great feedback, both from parents that are working with it and from the kids that are able to use it. So I'm really happy with the direction of that.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's an awesome project. I thought it was pretty cool. Like on the GitHub, you said the reasons why you converted it from JavaScript to Dart to work with WebGL or something visual like that. For kids, I would think would be very advantageous. Have you found that some kids have struggled, or most have pretty much been keen on that?
Oh no, kids are always going to struggle if they, it's JavaScript. So if you type something that's going to be meant to be capital, but they put it in as lowercase and don't notice that, it's going to be one of those things where like, wow, it's just not working. But as long as they've got an adult or somebody or the book forums to go to, we can get them sorted out. But for the most part, they've really embraced it, and it's one of those things that I really enjoy doing code camps with kids and watching them type it in, because for the first thing you've got to create a new 3JS object, and you've got to create a mesh, which is the shape of the object, and you've got to add a material onto it. It's a little bit of typing to create those three things, but once they add that to the scene and they see that, like you said, that they get the instant feedback of like, wow, I just created a sphere. That's pretty awesome, and they can go through and tweak the sphere and make it really smooth or make it really chunky, and then they can make a box, and things just move up, move from there. Being able to move it around the screen and bounce back and forth, they really love doing that, and it's a joy to watch them learn like that. I really enjoyed the project because of that. Makes it worthwhile.
Have you thought about other features to add on to it that you maybe haven't looked at yet?
Yeah, we're always thinking. I mean, we've got a nice core group that's working on that. I think the main thing that we're working on right now, or that we've finished, and it's in beta right now, is the ability to export your entire list of projects to be able to move it between machines and that kind of, and just to have a backup of stuff. We're also talking about embedding it as a polymer so that it can go onto a web page. You can, just demonstrate your 3JS concepts and ideas inside a web page where the person reading the article can actually type and interact with the example in there because of the Polymer web component. So those are the kinds of things that we're working on right now, and yeah, development keeps going, and we don't seem to have run out of ideas. It's one of those things we don't want to add too much because it's really meant to be a kid-friendly editor, so we don't want to just jam tons of stuff in there, but so far we've been able to find enough interesting things that we're able to move forward with it.
And as the kids advance, you have other more challenging type of things happening on there, right?
Oh yeah, in the book, they as they move forward, things are more challenging. They'll have to start working with physics in there. Yeah. They'll work with WebGL instead of Canvas. To get some of the nicer materials that are going in there. So yeah, the book progressively gets harder, and ICE supports this by having some default templates that when you're creating a new project, it'll create a new project instead of just with like a fairly simple scene. It'll create a new project with a scene that has physics already embedded into it, or it has WebGL already working in it. So it gives them a nice starting point in order to work with their projects.
What I really enjoyed about your approach to pair programming was that you managed to set up an hour each night just for pairing, and that was on your Google Calendar. You set it up so that developers needed to invite themselves to that session, right? So now they're committed. So that was brilliant to me because I find it difficult to force myself even to work on my own personal projects because of time, managing time with your own client work and, things at home. So it basically you've forced yourself in that to be available for those times to work on the ICE project. Not only that, it makes it more likely that a developer will feel committed to that time because it's now a calendar event. So they're more committed to show up because it's perceivably you're dependent on them to show up and help you with this. So that's pretty cool approach, especially for newcomers.
Yeah, they can just search for, they can just Google for ICE Code Editor, or they can go to my my GitHub account, and like you say, right at the, I think on the GitHub account, it's at the bottom of the page. On my blog, it's at the top of the page, and I really do appreciate people that pair with me. I mean, it's one of those things. It's sort of like the blogs. It's we make a little bit of progress. We only work for an hour, so we make a little bit of progress. But if I don't pair with people on that, I don't work on that. I have so many other, I need to write the books. I need to write the blog posts every day. The only way I can, make progress on the ICE Code Editor, and it needs progress. We need to add some features in there. The only way to do that is by pairing with people. So I really appreciate people, even if they have absolutely no experience with JavaScript or Dart or programming of any kind. I appreciate people just signing up so that I have somebody to talk to while I'm coding. And like you say, I have somebody to force me to sit down there and work on it and move me forward. So it goes both ways on that. Like I said, and I was trying to say that it really helps me move forward to have people sign up on there, and it forces me to work on it, and I really appreciate them being there. Even if they have no experience, it helps me move the project forward. So it goes both ways. It helps me move the project forward. So even if they have no experience and they don't feel like they're contributing anything, they're moving me forward, which is so very important. So I really enjoy having that there.
Yeah, and I have to say, when I signed up too, I didn't even realize that I'd be coding in Dart, and I'm like, oh no, I'm going to be useless here. But you were really cool about it. And we went through the tests, and it was really it was pretty awesome. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So anyone out there who wants to pair and work on this, because even if you don't know Dart, like Chris said, it's definitely a great learning experience for both people. Is there a new language, platform, or tool that you're interested in, but you haven't had time to play with yet?
No, I can't say that I guess I'm somewhat interested in Go on the server, so I haven't really had a chance to play with that. I think that would have to be the one that I'm interested in getting to it at some point.
Go seems to be the way people are going from the Ruby community and the JavaScript community, apparently.
Yeah, it seems like an interesting little language, and I'm sure at some point I'll have the opportunity to work on it, but it's not strong enough draw just yet to tear me away from Dart and JavaScript and and all the books that I'm writing.
A lot of different things happening in different languages. And it's kind of a surprise too. Like everyone seems to be moving with Go. Not that it's bad. I think it seems like such a great language to work with. But like in the JavaScript community, TJ Holloway-Chuck, who wrote like half of the user land stuff out there for Node, just recently said he's leaving Node more or less from the community to move to Go. So that's right. pretty impressive. I was hoping, with the embracing of web components with Dart, that's what kind of draws me to that too. Whereas becoming part of the workflow, it seemed.
I think that I think Go is taking a similar path that I'm hopeful that I'm optimistic that Dart will eventually take. Is that they put it out there. There was a very small very small community that was really excited about it and kept working at it. But pretty much everybody else just sort of ignored it for a long time until all of a sudden, and you're right, it seems like just this past year, everybody's just like, wow, this is awesome. Let's hop onto it. There's a lot of crazy benefits. We should really be using this. And I think as awesome as Go almost certainly is, I think there are a lot more benefits to Dart once people start taking a look at it. I think that people are going to hop onto that in a similar kind of fashion. I would expect in a year or two that it'll follow the same trajectory of uptake that Go did.
Chris, your last few blog posts have talked about benchmarking.
Yep.
And pretty interested in that. Can you tell us more about why you find benchmarking valuable in the work that you're doing now, and how do you go about doing it?
I mean, it's one of those things that got ingrained to me very early on as a programmer. I had a mentor who, anytime I would come to him and I say, oh, look at this code I just wrote. It's awesome. It's going to be much faster and all that kind of stuff. And he would hold his hand up and he would say to me, show me the numbers. I don't believe it's faster until you can prove that it's faster.
That's great.
Show me the numbers. And it was fantastic. He like really drove that into me. And so that's part of, it's part of, every time I say, oh, this feels like it's faster. I'm pretty sure it's faster. It's always in the back of my head. Show me the numbers. So that's really what the benchmarking stuff has grown out of. That as I'm working through various, for the book, I'm still not sure exactly how I want to lay everything out or how I want to choose the solutions that I present. But if I'm going to say that, this is going to be faster, I want to be able to prove that it's faster. So that's why I've been exploring the benchmarks. And I don't know, I'm not sure that I'll end up using them and much for writing the book, but it still feels like it's valuable going through the exercise just so that if I need to, I can demonstrate that, yes, this approach is the fastest way to do it in Dart, or in Dart compiled to JavaScript. And unless I can prove that, then I'm just waving my hands, and it's not going to be as valuable a book for people. But just want to be able to show people the numbers.
I feel like that's a great approach, though, because then you get more transparency, right? So like when people buy your book, they're going to see that, and they're going to be, oh wow, okay, so here's the numbers for this. Let me go to the actual benchmark, or let me see the code, and I'll run it, right? So I think that's a great idea. I think it's a good approach.
Yep, and it's taken a little bit of embarrassment on my part as I go through and I do the benchmarks completely wrong or count the numbers completely wrong. I've done that more than once while I'm building this up. But small little steps. I think I've almost got all the kinks worked out, and I can actually prove that the numbers are right. It's one of those things that the Dart community has been really good about pushing back on me and saying, hey, you're using the wrong thing here. You shouldn't do it this way, or the benchmark would work better if you did this. And I think I'm getting to the point where there really are going to be valuable benchmarks to be able to show people the numbers.
Is there good tooling for doing the benchmarks? Is there libraries out there that you're working with, or have you kind of rolled your own?
No, there's a package called Benchmark Harness, which the Dart core team uses in order to benchmark those algorithms we talked about in the very start, to say that this code is the algorithms that they're testing Dart to JS with are actually improving and compare well. So I'm mostly just plugging into to that benchmark harness and writing a little bit of my own. I found for whatever reason that if I run some of my code in a number of loops, 10,000 or 100,000 loops, then the numbers start changing. So I've written a little bit of code around that to explore that idea, so that I could tell people that, hey, if you're going to run this, if this code is going to run more than 100,000 times, or it's going to run 1,000,000 times, then maybe consider this option. But otherwise, these are fine.
I've had it where I'm researching something with Polymer, and I'm looking through the book, and then I'll look through your blog posts, and they'll be like when you did SVG, you were talking about SVG and the Polymer elements, and you're like, damn, I can't get this to work, and then the next blog post would be, I got this to work, but now there's this other piece that I need to work with performance on. And then it would be like this whole story going through maybe 5 or 6 posts, and it was like fun to read it. So I think you've been really good about taking those changes from your blog and taking what you learned and pushing it back into the books, which is great.
Yeah, thanks. That is one of the things. I mean, when I first started doing the blog posts, it was just blog posts. I had no idea that I was going to start writing books. It was just, for that CouchDB one, and then there was another series of, a couple hundred blog posts in a chain where I just sort of worked through various ideas and just wrote about them like that. And then at some point I just realized that, hey, at the very end of this, I've got a lot of knowledge that, might be good in a book format rather than laid out like that. And it's really worked out well, where I can have those posts that are out there that are useful for people, but also serve as, good research material, and also like a first draft a lot of the chapters that I write. So it's a process that takes some dedication, but it really works well for me.
So we talked a lot about Dart, a lot about Polymer, the ICE editor, a little bit about Go even. Is there other stuff maybe that we missed, do you think, things that are important to talk about?
Oh, I mean, my first book was on Speedy and HTTP 2.0, so I enjoy working on the server side as well, and I think that's going through some growing pains right now in committee on the Web Standards Committee, but I think that's going to prove useful. That I've already found that useful in order for speeding things up. And then there's the Backbone. I enjoyed working with the Backbone book. That was a fun book to work with. Worked with my friend Nick Gauthier on that, and learned a ton on that, and really enjoyed that as a framework as well. So I don't know. There's always new and interesting and fun stuff that's out there. I could talk all day on that stuff, and I guess that's why I write the books. So yeah, people already know what I think about it.
Yeah, I think Avdi Grimm said, and if I'm butchering his quote, let me know. But he had said, if you want to learn something, write about it, present about it.
Yep.
So I mean, that's so true.
Yeah, it really is. It's and that was one of the the driving forces behind the original blog posts. I had to write about it every day. So not only did I have to do it every day, I had to write about it every day and put it out there for people to read. So I had to be able to explain it every day, and that forced me to learn it that much better. And it really works, just writing the blog posts. But then being able to write the books on top of the blog posts takes it to another level as well. So it's and really, that's the main reason that I do all this. It's not so much that it pulls in the clients. It does pull in clients, but it's more just so that I can learn, because that's really the main thing. That's why I like computers. That's why I like programming. And, as you say, there's always new stuff coming out, and it's like crazy to think about all the stuff that's coming out. But that's what makes it fun, and this is just a way of focusing that fun for me. And I love it. I can't stop it at this point.
Don't stop. It's all good. So, I mean, I think we've got a little over time. If people want to find you, how do they find you? And is there anything that you want to plug? Any upcoming presentations you're doing or anything like that?
I'm trying to take it easy with the presentations. I'll probably look at some of the regional ones in the Baltimore area, but I just had a daughter. I'm trying to thank you. So I'm trying to take things a little bit easier now and spend a little bit more time with the family. Not that I don't spend time with the family, but I'm just trying to spend time as much as possible at home with the family for a little while. So I'm not going to be out and about as much. But yeah, and I'm plugging stuff, just my books. I try to do a great job, and hopefully there's a book out there that I've written that would interest some people. And really the 3D game programming for kids book, I hope that really helps bring in a whole new generation of programmers, and works well as working for parents working with their kids, or adults working with relative kids. So I would really like to see people bond over that book. That was really a labor of love for me. So please buy that one if you've got a kid anywhere in your life.
As far as contacting you, how might people trying to find you to program with or anything find you?
Oh, I mean, you could just Google for me. It'll come up on my blog or my Triplet Computes LLC website. That's probably the easiest way to get in contact with me. I've got all my contact information there. Or on Twitter, I'm Triple EC, EEE _C, and I'm always on there. And on Google Plus, I'm Chris Strom. So find me, talk to me. I love hearing from people and talking with people and getting feedback that I'm learning. So I appreciate any feedback that people might want to give to me, and I would love to work with people.
That's awesome. I know we were talking before the show too about how there's other Chris Stroms out there, and when people do Google searches for you, because of the immense amount of content you have, you just pop up everywhere, which is great.
It's all part of my evil plan. Yep.
And right.
Hey, it works.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. We really appreciate you coming Christian, is there anything else you wanted to ask or share?
No, I think I'm gonna try to take you up on that pair programming thing.
Awesome.
Looking at your calendar right now. So
I appreciate you having me on the show. I had a good time. Thanks.
All right, thank you. This episode comes to you, at least in part, through the support and sound equipment generously supplied by 3 Pillar Global. 3 Pillar is a software product development company in Fairfax, Virginia, and 3 Pillar is a leader in creating purposeful and innovative product experiences. 3 Pillar was recently named to the Washington Post Top Workplaces list for 2014. So if you want to follow 3 Pillar on the Twitters, it's at 3 Pillar Global. And to find out more and see current job openings, please visit 3pillarglobal.com. That's 3, the number, pillarglobal.com.